spread that we're seeing, it's basically the old LIBOR 3-month bill spread that's widening out, tells you that there's stress in the system, which isn't that unusual if you think about this rapid and this much of a drop in the equity market to create that people have made bad bets. I mean, at the very, ABC part of it, and people make bad bets, and now they need cash to cover it, and so there's a scramble for cash. So you sell treasuries, you go to the banks, you try to draw cash from the banks, and I think that's what's going on right now.
Steve, this is a really important point because we have on one hand an economic shock, an economic potentially crisis developing as a result of the slowdown that's been forced on the whole world, frankly, because of the coronavirus. But then you have the financial shock that you're starting to see the stresses in the system. How much do you think the financial shock and the financial crisis was alleviated or prevented enough to just sort of focus on the economic at this point? Or do we have more to go on the financial?
It's a great question, and I would say we have more to go because I think that what we can now begin, I think, looking at China coming back, and I think you can sort of now model out, probably in 6 weeks the NBA will be back playing. It's just a guess, obviously, and things will come back. So there's this quick economic contraction that will then that's going to come back. But
wait, Steve, before you continue, I just want to bring you some breaking news. The New York Federal Reserve announcing that today they will be buying Treasury securities of up to 30 years, a bona fide QE4, QE5, whatever number you want to put on this. But after the program that they opened up yesterday, the repo operations, the expanded ones that they're offering, which were really aimed at alleviating funding pressures and systematic issues. This is outright QE, it sounds like. We will bring you more details as we get them, but carry on.
Yeah, okay, so let's just pick up that. Okay, so what's happening here, and this is, I think, a very important point to understand. The old QE was let's flatten the curve, let's get 10-year yields even lower to stimulate borrowing, mortgages, things like that. What they're doing is they're saying, you know what, there's financial pressure, there's a lot of people out there, and by people I don't necessarily mean individuals, just people as institutions as well, domestic and foreign, that need to raise cash. And the thing you sell when you need to raise cash is treasuries. And what the Fed is saying is we will be on the other side of that trade to buy the treasuries to alleviate any funding pressures in the repo market. So we'll be there to buy it so that institutions that need to raise cash because of financial stress from the collapse in equity prices, as well as all the other bets that go wrong, credit bets, you name it. You've got people on all the time talking about, hedge funds, trades, and things like that. They need to raise cash. And what the Fed's stepping up and doing is saying, we're buying the treasuries from you. You don't have to find private sector buyers. We'll buy them from you to keep the market functioning. And that's step one. And that is the step to take. And all the other steps about should they get a steeper curve, because this isn't a good steepening of the curve. So it's a steepening of the curve and all the other things I've talked about things to try and get the economy going again and borrowing and to keep lending going really takes second place to this.
Steve Blitz, thank you so much for being with us. Good luck out there. Stay healthy. Steve Blitz, Chief U.S. Economist at TS Law. Joining us on the phone as we all isolate ourselves into our own little pods to prevent us all from giving each other's diseases. It is really interesting to see the Federal Reserve coming out with this step. And to Steve's point, which I think is a really important one, the Fed does not want to see the price action that it saw this week in treasuries, where yields rose simply because people were selling what they could and they wanted to sell longer dated treasuries because that is a haven asset. And this, to me, is going to put a backstop on that kind of activity, at least, Paul.
It is, and it had an immediate impact on the equity markets. Lisa, we had the Dow up close to 1,000 points here, so it had rallied a couple hundred points here on this news, up about 4.6%.
Yeah, and taking a look at 30-year Treasury yields, which had been higher on the day, now, not surprisingly, lower on the day, 1.41%. We got much more coming up. Lisa Abramowitz, Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks rebounding this morning after the worst day for equities since the 1987 crash. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she's close to an agreement with the Trump administration on an aid package to mitigate the blow from the coronavirus. The Dow rising around 700 points this session. The U.S. has given Roche emergency approval for a highly automated coronavirus test. The drug maker said it potentially speeds up the ability to test patients by a factor of 10. Warren Buffett won't allow shareholders to attend Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting in May. The meeting will still be held, but attendance will be limited to Buffett, possibly his business partner Charlie Munger, and several Berkshire employees who will deliver proxy votes. And all the cancellations in sports will cost the media industry billions of dollars in lost advertising sales. March Madness, the NBA playoffs, and the NHL playoffs together generated more than $2 billion in advertising last year, according to Kantar Media. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. Nearly limitless opportunities for analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Delayed at the dentist and now you're late for school pickup. You need a free now. Need to take the dog to the vet before lunch. Should have gotten a free now. Trying to get 4 kids and their baggage to the airport. Free now. Sometimes you can't get from A to B fast enough. Download the Free Now app today for quick pickups and reliable drivers, no matter the situation. Less hassle, more hustle with Free Now.
Get to know the real Ant McPartlin with the paper that knows him best. From the woman who saved him to the best friend who never gave up on him. Read all about how the troubled star beat his demons in an exclusive 24-page magazine special. Only in The Sun on Sunday this weekend.
True heroes make it all look so effortless, like your Hotpoint multi-flow oven from Curry's PC World. It cooks the perfect roast chicken thanks to the evenly distributed heat and keeps your oven spotless. All the grease is removed by catalytic liners so you can spend more time cooking and less time cleaning. Plus, you'll even get a 1 in 10 chance of winning £500 when you buy any Hotpoint Easy Clean oven. Heroes of the home at Curry's PC World. Terms and register at curryswin500.co.uk.
Peoples of London, don't be like Sergei, slaving Monday to Friday, then so frazzled by weekend, you no cook Sunday lunch. You need me, Alexander, to save the day.
Oh, so Sunday lunch means meerkat meals?
Exactly. Get 2 for 1 on food with meerkat meals at your local favorites, like Little Napoli, when you buy through Compare the Market.
Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch.
Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone.
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that yet.
You know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, pharmaceutical company Roche has won emergency approval for a faster coronavirus test. We'll get the latest from that. Plus, we're going to speak to Marian Harkin, Irish Parliament member and former member of the European Parliament, to get her thoughts on the European coronavirus stimulus that we heard this morning coming out of Europe. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg, what do you have?
We're in the green, Paul, and we're making some pretty strong moves. Strong moves up over 1,000 for the Dow, then up 500, now up around 700. But the main thing is stocks have rebounded from the worst day since 1987 yesterday. This amid signs policymakers around the world are taking action to stave off the economic fallout from the coronavirus. Oil's up after days of no, or what is being described by many as inadequate action. Policy prescriptions have come fast today. Some reports that Congress is near a deal on a relief bill. News that the New York Fed will buy Treasury securities today up to 30 years. And then on top of that, we're now getting word Spanish government is declaring a state of emergency as of tomorrow. Vitor Gaspar, International Monetary Fund Director of Fiscal Affairs, tells Bloomberg he thinks the best way to deal with the economic effects of the coronavirus is quite simply to get rid of the coronavirus.
The crucial first priority, make sure that health services have the means to fight this global pandemic.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. S&P 500 is up 4.3%, up 107. The Dow's up 3.7%, up 776. And the Nasdaq's up 4.3%, up 307. The 10-year is down 1 3/32. The yield is 0.91%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 4.1% at $32.80 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 1.3% at $15.6960 an ounce. The dollar yen, 107.18. The euro, $1.1106, and the British pound, $1.2502. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues on this Friday with Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. I want to take a look at the medical side of coronavirus, in particular, how we track it, how we test for it, and frankly, how close we are to actually curing it or solving it or ameliorating at least the effects. Luckily, we have Max Neeson, Bloomberg opinion columnist, covering all things healthcare with us today. Max, I want to start with Anthony Fauci, who's the director of the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease. Yesterday, he was testifying in front of Congress, and he said he admitted that it was a failing of the U.S. healthcare system that we did not have sufficient testing at the outset. Can you just walk through why we did not have better testing available right away so that we could track and isolate people immediately?
So there are, any number of reasons or failures for this. A failure of cooperation between agencies like the CDC and the FDA, a failure to bring in private companies and state labs rapidly enough, a decision at the outset, instead of using WHO-developed tests, one that's been deployed all over the world, we decided to develop our own, which turned out to have problems. Introducing those problems obviously created difficulties and slowed the rollout. And beyond that, just an overall decision by the government for, not necessarily the best reasons to restrict deliberately the number of tests that were deployed and and like the number of people that were tested, limiting it only to people with a direct travel history to China, in spite of the fact that there was, already evidence of spread in other parts of the world. And, the reality that the earlier, better to over-test than under-test. And we really didn't even get to that mindset until just a few weeks ago. So failure of leadership, failure of science, failure on many, many levels has led to this point.
Max, where are we right now in terms of the number of kits we have in this country, how widely dispersed they are right now? How easy is it for somebody to get a test, and just kind of where are we today, do you think?
Unfortunately, all that we really have are sort of these ad hoc estimates. I'll point people to former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, who's been, talking to state labs at the CDC, private companies trying to come up with a reasonable estimate. So we really don't have a confirmed number, unfortunately. And it seems to be the case that, your ability to get tested really depends on where you are. Are you in a state that took early steps to develop its own tests to stand up at more capacity than needed any given moment? We're still not at a point where everyone who needs to be tested can be, unfortunately, and probably won't be for a little bit to come.
Although Anthony Fauci did say today that he expects the number of tests to increase dramatically over the upcoming weeks, in part because the U.S. government is partnering with private companies. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is basically, looking into companies like LabCorp and Quest, these sort of brand name companies that have labs all over the country, and just basically making sure that they too are part of this effort. That, if a public lab is overwhelmed, if there isn't one available, send it to these companies, and they're finally beginning to stand up capacity to get, validate these tests and begin to run them. That'll be a huge help because they're more dispersed and potentially, quite capable of running a lot of tests. We're not at the stage where even they are going to provide all the capacity we need, but they will certainly help a lot.
Let's talk about cost, Max. I know you're out with a column today, really interesting. Coronavirus crisis makes a case for Medicare for all. Talk to us about that. Does that actually have some legs?
Yeah, so, it's a uniquely American phenomenon that in addition to people worrying about getting coronavirus, if they're smart, they will also be worried about the cost of getting coronavirus. The first step is obviously testing. There's been an effort from insurers and from individual states and the government to make sure that people won't be faced with costs. But that's, you actually have to take really aggressive steps to make sure that even testing in a pandemic is not going to cost people thousands of dollars. And then you get to the stage of whether when people actually have a hospital stay, a lot of people that don't use their health insurance that often assume that they're protected from unexpected bills. But if you end up with an inpatient hospital stay, you're going to hit your deductible. You're going to potentially face co-insurance, and that will get you to your plan's out-of-pocket maximum, which in many cases is in the thousands of dollars. And that's a financial strain on many companies, and that's the best case scenario. There are steps the government can take in an emergency to kind of prevent that from happening, to protect people from costs, still in the works and unclear whether they'll be broad enough to help. I'd argue that you might want a system, and this is what I argue in my column, where you don't have to take emergency steps to protect people from those costs.
Max Neeson, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate your perspective on all things healthcare. Max Neeson is a biotech, pharma, and healthcare columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, joining us here in our Bloomberg 1130 studio.
Thank you, Max. I mean, honestly, this just to me highlights a lot of weak spots. And, there's a question of how much is going to be temporary and how much will this entire episode reshape the way some people think about a variety of different issues.
This Medicare for all, I think, will be back on the table, certainly for the Democrats, as they think about, kind of how to position the U.S. Against some of these pandemics. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studio in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Amy Mars. Amy, what do you have?
Thank you, Paul. We're just getting word across the Bloomberg terminal that Canada has suspended Parliament on concerns over the coronavirus. We're going to keep following that for you. We're also looking at the federal preparation for the coronavirus pandemic here in the U.S. as it does overwhelm hospitals. Schools are closed. Offices are closed. Presidential campaign rallies have been canceled. The sports world has ground to a halt. They postponed the Masters in Augusta, Georgia. Seema Verna is the administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. She is also a member of of the White House coronavirus task force, and she says the U.S. has enough ventilators to treat the numbers of potential patients.
The stockpile is there, and we hope that it is adequate, but I think it's important to know that that's why we're focusing so much on the prevention of this and trying to mitigate the spread, so we don't create a situation where our whole healthcare system is unduly stressed.
Congress and the Trump administration also working on that sweeping aid package with sick pay and other resources to help calm Americans in the financial markets. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the Senate will stay in session next week rather than leaving Washington. They were supposed to be on a week-long break. So they'll stay here. They'll take up any legislation that emerges from those negotiations. And on this Friday, the last day of this historic week for global markets, not a lot of sign to the end of the volatility, roiling the bonds and currencies and sending stocks to their steepest plunge since the depths of the global financial crisis. There are now growing concerns that the coronavirus pandemic will spark a worldwide recession. That also fueled a fresh round of sell-off in Asia. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team? Where the money is flowing in.
Night is still young, but a little late to get into the wrong ride, don't you think? That's why I choose Ola. With secure start codes unique to every user, there's no way anyone can ride a car that's meant for you. Good night.
Ride the change with Ola. Download and sign up now. Enjoy no surge pricing until the 12th of April.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
IT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are recovering some of the ground following their worst session since the 1987 stock market crash. Congress and the White House are close to a deal, they say, to address the economic effects of coronavirus. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is now up 3.6%, up 88. The Dow is up 3.1%, up 658. And the NASDAQ is up 3 3/4%, up 270. The 10-year is currently down 30 seconds with a yield of 0.84%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 2 3/4% at $32.38 a barrel, while COMEX gold is down over 1% at $15.73.30 per ounce. The dollar yen is at 106.92, the euro $1.1104, and the British pound $1.2510. Germany's pledged to spend whatever necessary to protect its economy, and the European Commission says it's ready to greenlight widespread fiscal stimulus for Euro nations as policymakers aim to calm the markets. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. We continue with Bloomberg Markets, Lisa and Paul.
Great, Jared. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Well, one of the things that we've clearly learned with this coronavirus, it is a global pandemic affecting all parts of the globe, and that includes the UK and Western Europe. We have Marion Harkin. She's an independent member of Ireland's Parliament joining with us. She's also a former European Union Parliament member representing Ireland. Marion, thanks so much for joining us. You know, as we deal with the effects here and the growing effects of the coronavirus here in the United States, give us a sense of kind of how it's been in Ireland. I know that Ireland partially shut down schools as the virus outbreak worsens there. Give us a sense of what's happening on the ground in Ireland.
Well, good morning, Paul. It's certainly, we woke up to a different world, a different reality today. I was in the Irish Parliament yesterday, and our Prime Minister, our Taoiseach, announced the new regulations actually from Washington, and we have completely closed down our schools, our colleges. People are being asked to maintain what they call social distance or social distancing, which is to remain about a metre apart from other people. Hand washing is strongly encouraged on a very regular basis. And the purpose of, and all large events have been cancelled. Anything over 100 in an enclosed area or 500 outside. And I have no doubt that maybe even by this evening or tomorrow, that will be changed again. I mean, if you look across the EU, for example, in Norway, they have closed all their pubs, and in Belgium there are significant restrictions on opening hours for pubs, for restaurants, etc. So there's a whole raft of measures being taken at a pace, shall we say, and the whole purpose, Paul, is to slow down the transmission of the virus, because we want our healthcare systems to be able to deal with what happens when somebody catches this virus. And that's the real issue. It's not that we can stop it. We can't stop transmission of a virus unless we have immunity, and of course we have none. So it's to make sure, or to try and make sure, that we don't find ourselves in a position that our healthcare systems are completely overwhelmed. Right. Like, for example, as has happened in Italy.
Marion, there's sort of an irony baked into the concept of social distancing right now, because we're being told to stay away from each other, and yet there seems to be a greater degree of cooperation among elected officials and central bankers when it comes to trying to formulate some sort of response. And I'm wondering, as an independent member of Ireland's Parliament, do you get the feeling as though people are coming together regardless of their political bent or what country they're from? I mean, do you get a sense of unity or not really?
Oh, absolutely. There is a real sense wherein it's together. You know, it's not actually doctors and medicine, certainly in the short term, that will help us. It's the actions that we take as individuals. As I said, we cannot stop the virus spreading. What we can do is slow down the transmission so that healthcare workers, number one, don't have to make awful choices about who they treat and who they don't, and secondly, that they themselves don't get overwhelmed or come down with the disease. So I think people recognise that the only way we can get through this in any shape is that we must, as individuals, take responsibility, and then our governments and our healthcare systems take their responsibilities. But nobody is immune from this. And I think
hold on a second, though.
As I said, have woken up to a new reality.
This is important, and I think that it is true, and people are taking responsibility, and schools are closing around the world. As a government official, though, there is a responsibility to act on the fiscal side, and we did get out of the European Union today a plan to loosen the budgets of a number of different nations in order to allow them to provide the stimulus needed. Germany's government came out and said that it was going to provide unlimited credit. It appears to be ready to abandon its balanced budget credo that it's gone by for a long time. In Ireland, what are you doing? How much is this going to cost?
Well, at one level, we were lucky. We had a certain amount of money put aside to deal with the fallout from Brexit. And that, of course, is being completely used up now to start funding some of the measures that we have put in place. It probably won't be enough, but it's a start. So some of the measures that we will be putting in place and have put in place include next week, for example, we will have a sitting of the Parliament where we will put through emergency legislation on those who have to self-isolate or who have to leave work, both employed and self-employed, that they will get a certain rate of payments that they can continue to live and feed their families. If you work in the public service, you're entitled to sick pay, but otherwise your employer may not be able to pay you. So we are putting in place those emergency measures that nobody will be outside the loop and that people will take the responsible decision to self-isolate without fear of having to say, I have no income, I have no money. And for example, other measures that have already been taken in the last 24, 48 hours would include all of our police who are in training at the moment, even those who are only there for a couple of months, have all been given full Garda powers because we need more policemen available. The army is beginning to move in. Certain buildings that have been used for other purposes will now be available, if necessary, for medical use. So a lot of action in the last 24, 48 hours, some of it preparatory and some of it pretty immediate. And the good news for workers here is that we will backdate any payments to the 9th of March for people who are sick or who have to self-isolate.
Marion Harkin, thank you so much for being with us. Marion Harkin, independent member of Ireland's Parliament and former European Union Parliament member representing Ireland, joining us to give us a sense of what they're doing to grapple with this. In the United States, the focus very much front and center in Washington, D.C., and what kind of plan is being drafted by Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. They have been discussing all of the details, hashing that out. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve came out and basically announced a round of quantitative easing. Basically, they're going to be buying treasuries with maturities ranging up to 30 years. We are seeing a rally, although it is off earlier highs. The NASDAQ up 3.2%, the S&P 3%, the Dow 2.7%. This is Bloomberg.
That saying, success breeds success, it's true.
Are we seeing any improvement?
Carol Massar and Jason Kelly.
How would you describe your outlook?
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on
Get to know the real Ant McPartlin with the paper that knows him best. From the woman who saved him to the best friend who never gave up on him. Read all about how the troubled star beat his demons in an exclusive 24-page magazine special. Only in the Sun on Sunday this weekend.
Take the next left, take a right, and you've arrived at your Vauxhall retailer, where you'll find the all-new Vauxhall Corsa. Test drive now and you can take advantage of a £500 deposit contribution with 4.9% APR representative. Book your test drive of the all-new Corsa now. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. £500 allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status, T's and C's, 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Vauxhall Test Drive.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
You're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to chat with our good friend Vince Signorella on this little equity rally we have here this morning and on the central bank stimulus measures. Are they enough? Plus, we're going to take a look at the municipal bond market in the midst of all this volatility. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Now, speaking of that rally, Paul, we're still higher, but we're not at the heavy rally we were at the opening. It looks like some investors may be taking advantage of that and getting some money out of the market. Indices did rebound as investors were betting on another round of fiscal easing to thwart the looming global recession in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. Gabriela Santos of J.P. Morgan tells Bloomberg that investors should prepare for a recession, but also they should be in a position in case there's a rebound.
What does that mean? It means having some protection in a portfolio for what we think can be a continued rough patch here for the economy and a very volatile period for markets. That can include cash, treasuries, gold, safe haven currencies, some alternatives if appropriate. But we can't forget for medium, long-term investors that there is going to be a rebound.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 2.8%, up 68. The Dow is up 2.6%, up 554. And the NASDAQ is currently up 2.9%, up 206. 10 years down 25-30 seconds. The yield is 0.88%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 2.6% at $32.31 a barrel, while COMEX gold is down 1.8% at $15.62.60 an ounce. The dollar yen, 107.09. The euro is $1.11.02, and the British pound $1.25.15. American Airlines Group and the biggest carriers in South America among operators at risk, according to Fitch Ratings, of credit downgrades as the coronavirus spreads. Right now, AAL, American Airlines, is up 5.5%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. It is that time we normally take a look at small and mid-cap shares. And I will just say, I'm going to escalate this because every day I'm talking about the underperformance. And every day I talk about how this was surprising when the market was supposedly rallying around the idea of growth accelerating. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg stocks editor, day after day, coming in here and talking about it. Today, however, what are we seeing in small and mid-cap shares?
More of the same.
That's
how it works out. I mean, the Russell 2000 index is up 2%. Sounds good, except earlier on it was up 4.9%. And that 2% gain in the Russell compares with a 2.8% advance for the S&P 500. So smaller companies, once again, trailing here. And that said, the Russell's biggest gain belongs to Core Point Lodging, whose ticker is CPLG. The hotel owner has jumped 35.5%. Fourth quarter earnings were far above analyst average estimate in the Bloomberg survey, and revenue beat projections. Opco Health, ticker OPK, has climbed 28%. The company's lab testing unit reached a deal with New York State to provide drive-through tests for the coronavirus. And Citi Trends, ticker CTRN, has risen about 27.5%. The apparel retailer's profit for the fiscal first quarter beat estimates. Citi Trends said it will buy back as much as $30 million of stock. Now, the Russell's steepest drop, or at least one of them, belongs to Inovio Pharmaceuticals, ticker INO. It's down 23.5%. Piper Sandler and RBC Capital Markets cut ratings on Inovio, which had surged as much as fivefold this year, as it pursues a coronavirus vaccine. And Zuora, ticker ZUL, was falling 18.5%. Chief Financial Officer Tyler Sloat resigned from the software maker, and Zuora's fiscal fourth quarter revenue trailed estimates.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. I just want to bring you a headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. President Trump is to hold a news conference today at 3 p.m. Wall Street time on the coronavirus. So we will bring you more news of that as it develops throughout the day. So looking at today, a little bit of green on the screen. We have a bounce off of the terrible performance we've been experiencing over the last couple of weeks to get a sense of how we should be thinking about today's activity in the context of all the volatility and the downdraft in the markets. We welcome our good friend Vince Signorella, global macro strategist for Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Vince, is this kind of just a little bit of a dead cat bounce? Is it anything more? What are you reading into today's action?
Well, I think just a little bit of a bounce that you would expect after you've had so much of a downdraft the last 2 days. The market's going into a bear market. A little bit of profit taking going ahead into the weekend, but I have to say I was just having a debate with a trader. I would not be shocked to see us close at the lows of the day, or actually possibly even in the red.
Yeah, I get that, and part of the reason why is exactly as Greg Jarrett was saying. There is an idea that people are selling into the rally to try to stem some of the losses, and I want you to build on that and give us a sense of who is behind the action this week versus who is waiting to see kind of where things shook out to figure out what to do next.
I'm hoping, of course, that the retail market is waiting to figure this out. I think this is mostly professionals, what we're seeing. I had one guy actually say to me today, he goes, my platform went down, I couldn't buy the dip, and then I got stopped out on the other side of it. So that's, I think, what we're seeing a lot of go on. It's a lot of fast play. This is a lot of fast money in the market. It's not what I would call real money. We haven't heard of anything from corporate America as to real buybacks, the usual rules. You would think if they thought this was near a bottom, they'd be stepping in now. If I give you one indicator, keep an eye on gold. What we've seen as of late is when the hedge funds get in trouble and they're taking losses either in the fixed income or the equity space, they need to sell a profitable asset in order to not be called on margin. The one good trade they've had all year has been gold. We're seeing gold trade down again today, which tells me they're still hitting losses here and there, and that's why if gold doesn't turn, I don't think the equity markets are going to hold up.
Interesting. Gold, Vince, just down about 0.6% today to $1,566 an ounce. Vince, to what extent do you think the market's kind of, waiting for some kind of direction out of Washington, out of the White House? Is that a big deal? Is that a big marker for this market?
It really is a big deal. I mean, we were expecting something from the last press conference we got from Trump. We were expecting something from the ECB yesterday. Both failed. I mean, the big bazooka we were looking for from Lagarde didn't come. She pretty much put it on fiscal policy for European Parliament, which is really where it needs to come from. Monetary policy can't solve this problem. I've been stealing this from Mike McKee for about a week now. The 2 rate cuts and call me in the morning doesn't solve this economic crisis. You need fiscal stimulus, and if it doesn't come from Europe, I suspect the European economy is going to be in quite trouble. They're the new epicenter of the virus right now. It's moved from China to Europe.
Yeah, Vince, since you talk with a lot of traders, you were on the street for a long time. How far are we in the unwind of different leveraged funds and such that led to some very interesting trading, I should say, I guess, for lack of a better word, this week?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing the Fed throwing a lot of money at this is there was the markets in the short dates really came to a grind. People were not lending. But as one fixed income trader told me just a short time ago, this isn't 2008. This isn't counterparty risk. The balance sheets of the banks are very stable. The Fed actually coming in and buying 30 years today confused a lot of guys, and it was just like, what the hell are they doing? There's not a need for this. They're just throwing fuel to the fire. And the equity market spiked on the news, and now we're well off those highs where the Fed came in. So I'm worried that they're giving this QE4 feel, and they're going to prop up assets, and it's just not there.
Well, I mean, just to be honest, they have this huge repo operation announcement yesterday with more than $500 billion of arrangements, 3-month, et cetera. The take-up by banks was de minimis comparatively. It was less than $100 million, so $100 billion, excuse me. Right. So, I mean, just to that point, we're not really seeing it. Vince Signorella, we're going to let you go back to it. keep us posted as we deal with the trading, and it's going to be really interesting to see. I think really interesting the call that gold, wither gold, there goes the stock market. Vince Signorella, who is our global macro strategist for Bloomberg. Really interesting day. Really interesting week.
Yeah, you'd like psychologically to see them just hold some green here going into the weekend.
Yeah, although there is a feeling sell the rally right now. That seems to be the action. We'll see. It's been very volatile. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Amy Morris with more. Amy.
All right, thank you, Lisa. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says they're getting closer to that agreement with the Trump administration. They want to mitigate some of the economic blows that we have seen from the coronavirus outbreak. They even put off a vote on a package of measures that were proposed by Democrats after day-long talks yesterday with the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin. Now, Pelosi says she hopes to announce today that they have a deal. We are watching for that. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the Senate will stay in session next week rather than leaving Washington, which is what they were going to do. They want to take up any legislation that emerges from those negotiations. The head of the Allergy and Infectious Diseases Institute at NIH, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says Americans need to get ready for things to get worse. It'll be a while before they get better.
It's going to be at least a matter of several weeks. I mean, it's unpredictable, but if you look at historically how these things work, it'll likely be anywhere from a few weeks to up to 8 weeks or more.
3 surveillance powers, meanwhile, available to the U.S. government are set to temporarily expire on Sunday after 3 senators opposed a bipartisan House bill that would renew those authorities and impose new restrictions. The Senate is expected to consider the House bill next week, but it is not clear if the president is going to sign it. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had hoped to pass that legislation yesterday, but was forced to delay it after Republican Senators Rand Paul and Mike Lee and Democratic Senator Ron Wyden said that they would object. So now it's going to temporarily expire on Sunday. The Democratic National Committee has moved Sunday's Democratic primary debate from Arizona to Washington, D.C., and there will not be a live audience. You can hear that debate live on Bloomberg Radio. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
A PAC needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg.
This is a message from the government and the NHS about how to protect yourself and others from coronavirus. Wash your hands more often than usual, for 20 seconds each time. Use soap and water or a hand sanitizer when you get home or arrive at work, when you blow your nose, sneeze or cough, and when you eat or handle food. For more information, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus. Protect yourself and others.
Discover more tech, comfort and style for less. Upscale your drive at this year's Nissan Red Tag event with an additional £500 deposit contribution at 4.99% APR representative, available when you buy a new Nissan Micra N-Tech, Qashqai N-Tech or the 100% electric Nissan Leaf. Offer valid until March 31st. Offer valid on 4.99% APR representative. PCP product participating dealers only. Private retail customers only. Nissan Finance subject to status 18+. Excludes CI and NI. For full T's and C's visit nissan.co.uk/redtag. Nissan. Innovation that excites. Make sure you don't miss out by visiting Westway Nissan.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Off earlier highs, it's still a rebound when you consider yesterday was the worst day since 1987. Looks like policymakers around the world are taking action to stave off the economic fallout from the coronavirus. Oil is still higher, and not as high as it was earlier. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is currently up 2.8%, up 69. The Dow is up 2.8%, up 598. And the Nasdaq's up 2.8%, up 202. The 10-year is currently down 1 2/32 with a yield of 0.91%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 1.5% at $31.98 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 1.8% at $15.6210 per ounce. The dollar yen, 107.11. The euro, $1.1115, and the British pound, $1.2503. President Trump, we're understanding now, is to declare a national emergency over coronavirus. Donald Trump is expected to speak to the nation starting at 3 p.m., I believe, Eastern time, but we'll get some clarification from our hosts momentarily. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Yes, that red headline coming across the Bloomberg terminal, Trump to declare a national emergency over the coronavirus. He is hosting a press conference today at 3 p.m. Wall Street time. We will, of course, bring that to you. The Focus on Munis is brought to you by Build America Mutual. Is your municipal bond investment safe even if the next recession reduces public revenues? Yes. AA guaranteed. BAM Municipal Bond Insurance protects against everything that causes a default. Visit buildamerica.com. Let's get an update on what is going on in municipal bond market. When you take a look at all this volatility, you wonder, we're seeing it across all asset classes. So to get a sense of where we are in the muni market, Eric Kazatsky, municipal strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, joins us on the phone. So Eric, again, just unprecedented amount of volatility across all asset classes. Give us a summary of kind of what you've been dealing with in the municipal bond market.
Hi, good morning. So it has been a pretty wild week for all markets, and munis are no different. I think the biggest story, though, is just the sheer volume that is seen go in and out of the market, combined with the rate moves that we've seen that have sort of been really a divergence from treasuries. Munis have sort of followed along directionally with treasuries going down, and then we had a pretty clean break once we got below 1% for muni yields, and we sort of took off in the other direction. We've really seen it back up, on the long end, about 85 basis points this week, which is really unheralded and took a lot of people by surprise. But as we said in our note this morning, if you look back, we're really at the levels we were in November. So, you don't have to go too far back in time to see where we are, historically on a rate basis.
Sure.
So I was trying to find a little bit of a silver lining.
Eric, although it's notable, municipal bonds are typically viewed as a haven. It is considered government debt proxy, sort of, and it does trade in tandem or actually within treasury yields. And I'm trying to understand why this time was different, why there were mass sales of municipal bonds, and we saw the worst decline in the debt since 2002.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple of things going on. One, you have a valuation factor that really came into play, and I think I referred to munis as sort of like our Icarus moment this morning. As all the yields on the muni curve got below 1%, retail really took a step back. And, from what I was hearing, a lot of people in the retail world, they were getting a lot of pushback from people at those absolute rates. So it was really a battle between absolute value versus relative value when you got that low. So you have that factor playing in. And now you mix in all the uncertainty with the coronavirus. And, I think a lot of people are asking themselves, how do you adequately model the risk to the economy, to muni sectors with sort of this unknown exogenous credit event that really didn't exist in the market a couple months ago? And I feel like that those two factors have really combined to push muni rates out.
So, Eric, some of the sectors I know have been really at risk are some of those airline bonds. We talked about those before. Give us a sense of kind of how much, and those airport, how much they've been hit.
I mean, all the sectors have been hit pretty hard. If you look at sort of the biggest underperformers in the high yield sector, it has been tobacco bonds and airline bonds. As we noted a couple weeks ago, we thought that the most at risk sectors of the airport portion were really going to be those private activity bonds, backed by the actual airlines, Delta, American Airlines, United, and they have been some notable underperformance there. I think, again, a lot of people are scratching their heads and just trying to figure out, is this a one-quarter event, a two-quarter event, a three-quarter event? And when it comes to airlines and trying to figure out how it's going to impact from enplanement traffic, concession revenue, and parking revenue, no one really knows how this is going to play out. And so you've seen a lot of bid lists coming out with airline names and airport names on them.
Well, there's the economic shock aspect of this, with the entire travel industry basically shutting down in the wake of the coronavirus fears. I'm trying to understand, though, the financial markets aspect of this. We've been talking about a lack of liquidity in corporate bonds, a lack of liquidity in treasuries. What was liquidity like, the ability to actually buy and sell municipal bonds this week?
You know, for the people who were out there buying, it was sort of name your price a little bit. There's a lot of game show level pricing going on, but it really was name dependent. But, you know, we saw a lot of spread widening on things that I would view relatively safe, you know, pre-refunded munis. You know, those sort of bonds, you know, really shorten the curve. They were trading with, you know, negative spreads in some instances, let's say a couple months ago. Here, you know, in the last week, you were buying those names, you know, plus 70, plus 80. And that really just goes to show you that there was a lot of good being thrown out with the bad as far as the selling yesterday. So I think a lot of people were able to opportunistically do some buying yesterday.
Game show prices. I like that.
Yes.
I'm going to have to use that. Game show pricing. It's a game show pricing. That's a new way to express a wide bid-ask spreads, or a lot of BWICs coming out and having to figure out how to parse through it. Do I hear a 5? Do I hear a 6? Like little auction paddles. Eric Kazatsky, municipal strategist for us at Bloomberg Intelligence. Thank you so much for being with us. Talking about municipal bonds, I will just say it was a dramatic week in the muni bond market with some massive outflows and some massive volatility. And when we talk about how idiosyncratic the corporate bond market is, the municipal bond market's even more so, with even smaller batches of bonds and different tickers and all over the counter. And so interesting to see the game show pricing.
Right, exactly. I would have thought that would have been, you know, a kind of a safe haven, if you will, particularly some of the higher quality credits. You would have think that you'd see some actually demand for some municipal bond credits.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he was saying that people were kind of reaching that Icarus moment. You flew too close to the sun with the sub 1% yields. We're not getting that much of a haven here. Forget it. Right now in the markets, we're seeing, the rally, but it's off earlier highs. And it's interesting that we're seeing it retreat even after the Federal Reserve of New York came out and said they were going to buy coupon-bearing maturities of treasuries. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks bouncing back from the worst day since 1987. There are signs that policymakers around the world are taking action to prevent an economic fallout from the coronavirus. The Trump administration and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi optimistic they will reach an agreement on a package of measures to guarantee sick leave for people infected by the coronavirus and provide testing and treatment. Meantime, the government has announced new steps to speed up testing for the coronavirus. The FDA announced it had approved the first rounds of high-volume testing. President Trump will hold a news conference at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the coronavirus. And the recent slump in Disney shares could make it an attractive takeover target for the likes of Apple. That's according to analysts at Rosenblatt Securities, which said Apple has $107 billion of cash on hand. Disney has shut down Disneyland, Disney World, and Disneyland Paris through the end of the month due to the rapidly spreading coronavirus. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown, today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
Yeah, so I want to upgrade to, like, the latest phone you got. Okay. All right. But, like, for an unbelievably good price. Yeah? And I want it where I could choose the length of my own contract. Yeah!
On O2, you're our headline act, which is why you can get the phone you want for less per month with a custom plan on O2.
Minimum upfront cost, direct only, device plan of 3 to 36 months, refresh credit by Telefonica UK Limited, terms apply.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Interconnect here.
Let's start with the national security implications of this.
Balance of Power with David Weston.
What could the United States do to help?
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at the impact on sports. First, it was the NBA, then the NHL, then the NCAA tournament. Now even the Masters, all postponing or canceling events in the wake of the coronavirus. We'll see what it means for the business of sport. We'll take a look at that. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg, what do you have?
Let's not forget the English Premier League as well. They have said that they're going to stop playing until at least early April, and then they'll reassess. And now President Donald Trump says he plans to declare national emergency today over the coronavirus outbreak. That news conference is anticipated at 3 p.m. Wall Street time. They'll be invoking the Stafford Act, according to sources, to open the door to more federal aid for states and municipalities. And when that news broke, stocks began to back off gains. By how much? Well, the Dow was up well over 1,000 at the open. Now it's only up a little over 300. James Bevan, CCL Investment Management, tells Bloomberg uncertainty is the big enemy of investors here.
We really don't know enough about, first of all, the progress of the virus itself, but perhaps secondly, more importantly, what happens to the fear of participants in markets. And therefore, in particular, I think there's going to be a significant focus on what the authorities do, both central banks and governments.
Well, it was the last 15 seconds, stocks really came off their highs. S&P 500 is now up 1.3%, up 33. The Dow, as I said, was up well over 1,000. It's now up 236 or 1.1%. The NASDAQ is up 1.25%, up 90. The 10-year is currently down 18.30 seconds with a yield of 0.86%. West Texas Intermediate had been in the green all morning long. Now it's down 0.1%, at 31.46 a barrel. COMEX Gold is down 1.6% at 15.6550 per ounce. The dollar yen is at 106.77. The euro $1.1116. And the British pound, $1.2493. We just got a red headline. The Trudeau government in Canada says they're seeking advice on a stimulus package. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. There is a question of what to do with bond yields this low, given the fact also that they are acting as something you sell in a market that is selling off to the degree that we have seen yesterday and on Monday. In other words, we saw yields rise, even though we saw stocks also sell off dramatically. There's no one better to talk to about that than Emily Rowland. She's the co-chief investment strategist at John Hancock Investment Management. And Emily, we love to have you on. We're so glad that you could join us today. You wrote a really interesting note where you were talking exactly about this phenomenon, the idea that stocks had their worst day since 1987 and 30-year Treasury yields rose. What was your interpretation of that action?
Yeah, Lisa, thank you so much for having me. And it certainly was an interesting dynamic to watch yesterday with stocks selling off and yields backing up. And we had a couple of kind of potential explanations for that. One was that, maybe investors are finally waking up to the idea or recognizing that we may, blow out the deficit here with tax cuts or fiscal stimulus and no real way to pay for that. Or secondly, which I think is probably the more plausible situation, is that it was one of those kind of sell everything type of days where we've seen margin calls come into the picture here. And hedge funds are looking at, what's been positive for them year to date, what could be sold. And really, high quality bonds, treasuries have been one of the only asset classes on the books that have been positive year to date. So that's really kind of where our heads are at in terms of what happened yesterday.
So, Emily, as equity investors really try to take in what's just happened over the last several weeks, the speed at which we went from, hitting all-time highs to entering bear market territory is just extraordinary. I know it's the fastest on record. What do you make of the speed at which this market has pulled back?
Yeah, I think it certainly creates fear, and fear builds on fear. But the kind of silver lining here is that because this has happened so fast, that, the snapback could be just as quick. And for that reason, we suggest that investors stay invested, even though it kind of feels bad right now. One of the things that we've done is kind of look back in history at other bear markets that we've had. There's been about 10 of them in the post-World War II era. This will be the 10th. And we've looked at kind of how deep those drawdowns are and how quickly it happens or how quickly it takes to get back from that low back to the prior peak. And usually drawdowns is about 35% is what you see in an average bear market drawdown. We're at 27% now, so that's about 75% of the way there. But, if you look at how long it typically takes to come back, it's about 4 years on average. It could be faster this time. If you look at 1987, which we would say would be another example of kind of an exogenous shock impacting the market actually reclaimed those prior highs in just under 2 years. So we would use that as an analog for what we're seeing today.
Emily, there's this idea of long-term. There's also an idea that some people have to trade, and some people have money that they would like to put to work and understand how to do that. How would you suggest that somebody rearrange, whether it's they're receiving coupon payments incoming from existing debt instruments that they own or dividends? Where should they go? Where should that money go?
Yeah, so first of all, Lisa, we would suggest, dollar cost averaging into a balanced portfolio. It works, it's a good strategy, and we think that that's the right way to approach it. More specifically, we continue to think that bonds and high-quality bonds should be the ballast of a portfolio. And in fact, yields backing up, to us, actually offers a better entry point at this stage. So we think leaning into treasuries, mortgage-backed securities makes sense here. And on the equity side, we've been suggesting since the beginning of the year that notching up on quality and employing a barbell approach with some sectors for offense, some sectors for defense is also the right way to approach this market. So participate and protect remains kind of the name of the game in our book.
Emily Rowland, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your thoughts on this busy day. Emily Rowland, Co-Chief Investment Strategist at John Hancock Investment Management, joining us on the phone. So, Lisa, just looking at the markets here, we're kind of giving up some of those gains. We're still positive, but only up about 1.3% on the S&P. Obviously, had been much higher, and on the Dow, we're up about 1.2%, 265 points. We had been up over 1,000 earlier. So this bounce kind of losing some of its legs here.
Yeah, and there's a question what the implication here is the idea that the Federal Reserve Bank of New York came out yesterday with a repo operation that, depending on how you tally it, was over $1 trillion of potential ammunition. Today saying they were going to buy treasuries of maturities dating up to 30 years. This was ineffective at propping up markets. And I think this is a sort of big takeaway from this week. Central banks are trying.
Yep.
And they are no longer able to dampen volatility and prop up asset prices the way they have in the past. This is, frankly, the period of time where the central bank put is no longer.
That's right. And I think that just puts more weight on what we're going to hear from President Trump at 3 p.m. today. Is there some type of fiscal stimulus coming that could, in fact, be meaningful? Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Amy Mars. Amy, what do you have?
All right, thank you, Paul. President Trump does plan to declare a national emergency over the coronavirus outbreak. Sources tell Bloomberg News the president will invoke the Stafford Act, opening the door to more federal aid for states and municipalities. The president is under increasing pressure to act as governors and mayors across the country step up actions to mitigate the spread. They've closed schools, they've canceled public events, sports canceled. The president said he'll hold a news conference at 3 o'clock Wall Street time, and we're going to bring that to you live right here on Bloomberg Radio. We're looking at the federal preparation for the coronavirus pandemic. It is overwhelming hospitals and shuttering schools and offices. Seema Verna is the administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. She's also a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, and she says there are enough ventilators in the U.S. to treat the numbers of potential patients.
The stockpile is there, and we hope that it is adequate, but I think it's important to know that that's why we're focusing so much on the prevention of this and trying to mitigate the spread so we don't create a situation where our whole healthcare system is unduly stressed.
This as Congress and the Trump administration are working together on a sweeping aid package that includes sick pay and other resources to help calm Americans and the financial markets. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, meanwhile, says the Senate will stay in session next week rather than leaving Washington on their break as they had planned to take up any legislation that emerges from the negotiations. And once again, the president planning to declare a national emergency over the coronavirus outbreak. That is set for 3 o'clock Wall Street time. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Night is still young, but a little late to get into the wrong ride, don't you think? That's why I choose Ola. With secure start codes unique to every user, there's no way anyone can ride a car that's meant for you. Good night.
Ride the change with Ola. Download and sign up now and get up to £15 vouchers. Terms and conditions apply.
Yo, look at this, look at this. What do you reckon? Should I swipe right? Yo, check this out, check this out, check this out. Yo, bro. Hey, look at this. Yo, look at this, look at this. Should I swipe right? Hey, look over here. Yo, bro, check this out. Should I swipe right? Check this out. Look, I'm vomiting rainbows.
Oi, get your phone out my face. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry, mate. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car. So don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
The air has been let out of the rally. This Business Flash is sponsored by Witham, a forward-thinking, tech-driven advisory and accounting firm helping clients be in a position of strength in today's modern business landscape. Visit Witham to learn more. We did open it over 1,000 up on the Dow, which is not there now. Investors are seeking more information on just how governments and central banks will protect the global economy, and they hope that they are going to get that at 3 p.m. Wall Street time when President Donald Trump takes to the airways. Sources say he's going to declare a national emergency. We check the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is now up 0.7%. That would be up 16. The Dow is now up 0.6%, up 122. And the NASDAQ is up 0.4%, up 31. The 10-year is down 19 seconds with a yield of 0.86%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is now down 0.9% at 31.23 a barrel, while COMEX gold is down 3.5% at 15.3470 an ounce. The dollar yen 107.05. The euro is $1.10.92, and the British pound $1.24.56. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. I do just want to really emphasize how much the tape has deteriorated in the past 30 minutes or so. Greg, thank you so much for being with us and highlighting the round trip and the sort of rough action that we continue to see. But right now, I'm looking at the NASDAQ. It's barely positive. It's up 0.3% after being up more than 4% at one point. And the tape really deteriorated after President Trump reportedly was going to declare a national emergency over coronavirus. That headline crossed 1117, and you saw the tape just materially deteriorate. So we'll keep you up to date on what exactly is going on and try to understand it. And honestly, the DAX, the idea that the DAX...
Mention that. That is just extraordinary what we've seen there.
So the DAX in Germany, the German Stock Exchange, had risen as much as 9% earlier in the day. It has reversed almost all of those gains. And it just is shocking how volatile. Again, it goes to the incredible swings, the incredible vacuum of information, and the incredible reliance, frankly, on policymakers to come out with something, although unclear what exactly it would be that would make them happy at this point, since it's unclear how much stimulus would be needed. In the meantime, if you're looking to distract yourself by watching a basketball game or a football game or even a golf tournament, too bad. Forget about it. You're out of luck. They've all been canceled. American sports has been shut down. Scott Soshnick covering it all. Scott Soshnick is a Bloomberg sports columnist joining us here in New York. And I'm wondering, Scott, how big of a hit's this going to be economically?
Well, it depends on what you're all around. If you're Madison Square Garden, you have two teams. It's the arena, it's the network, and you're getting hit on every single part of that business. You have other theaters as well. If you're Live Nation, you've got nothing. Great company, but no events. You're getting crushed. If you're AEG, an arena operator, you're getting crushed. So it remains to be seen what the contracts with the networks will look like, what the contracts with the players union will look like, whether they get together and figure out how to help each other out. But they just don't know how long this is going to last.
So let's talk about the media rights. That's just the bread and butter of the economics of professional sports. And I'm thinking about ESPN, Fox Sports, CBS with, the March Madness. How bad is it going to be for these media companies?
It's terrible. How bad is it going to be? It's terrible, but they have to put something on the air. And ESPN yesterday put out their statement like, we're doing it one day at a time. This is what we've got on the air tonight. That's all. That's as far. Nobody has done this before. So the bread and butter, as you know, why do they pay all these money? It's two words: live rights, studio shows, and what's called shoulder programming. All the things that surround. Those are just sort of the appetizers to the feast, which is the live event game, that thing that's been driving OTT and driving those rights fees. They're not there. It's just not there.
I'm just thinking back to a Gary Larson cartoon that had a family all around, and it was, I'm describing cartoons on radio, the best kind of radio, looking at one spot on the wall with nothing there, and it said the world before television, and it sort of raises this sort of existential moment.
Yeah.
What are people going to do with their time? What do you fill the airwaves with if you don't have this, the sports?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you're Turner, yes, you have a big portfolio of sport events. You do. But Turner can show me myriad other things. It's not an all sports network like ESPN. Turner has a big, it's an ATT, of course. They have a big movie library. You want to show me Shawshank? You want to show me Rudy? People may still tune in for those things. But if you're missing that key component, that ardent fan who wants the game, you're in trouble. I mean, just last night, I went down the channel guide with my son. We're just going nope, that one, nope, nope, nope. Yep. But it's amazing how many channels are devoted to sports.
Yeah, you think about all the regional sports.
You have all the RSNs. Sinclair is exposed there. Absolutely. What are the transmission fees? And everybody says the same thing. I've talked to all these folks. We don't know. We'll figure it out.
Are the players, do they get paid?
No. Specifically the NBA. Specifically after 9/11, a force majeure clause was inserted into the labor contract with the players. That includes things like disasters, but also the word epidemic. I mean, that's a specific term. The NHL has a force majeure clause in the standard player contract, but the word epidemic, that particularly does not appear.
I'm just struck by how big of a business the athletic leagues really are. I mean, it's not just the athletes, it's not just the networks, but it's also all of the gig employees who work around broadcasting all of these events. It's all the people who work on setting up the courts. I mean, it's a massive industry.
You have seen some owners, Mark Cuban immediately addressed those hourly workers. Josh Harris and David Blitzer have also addressed. They will figure out a plan to address compensation for these hourly workers who just rely on this income. I don't know if every owner will do that because they certainly don't have to, but at least it was nice to see Mark thinking about it at the outset, that those folks who not are on the front lines, they're not the players, they're not the $1 million assets, but they are integral to putting on the whole thing. And on the broader scale of pro sports, if people don't think about it, these are real estate investments, they're media investments. These teams are just the centerpiece of all these arms, and a lot of that disappears when the game's not there.
So are the leagues, are you getting a sense, it seems like most of them are suspending their seasons.
Yeah.
Some, I guess, like the NCAA, we're done with winter and spring sports and things like that. Are they suspending it, hoping they can salvage something at some point? I guess, it depends on which league you are.
Well, almost all sports league, Paul, and you know this better than most. What does everybody ramp up for? The playoffs. Right? The NBA and the NHL, you want to see the playoffs. That's what matters most. In fact, the joke around NBA circles is the season doesn't even start until Christmas. So you're just washing a couple of months anyway. If 4 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, situation improves to a point where they can stage games with fans or without, because let's not forget, the main driver here is always television. You'll give up the gate. If they can put those teams on the court, on the ice, and stage a playoffs, they would be happy to do so.
Can you imagine just having everyone wear masks?
Yeah,
players.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think so. But actually, there was a picture from the 1918 World Series where the batter was actually, they were wearing masks in the game. So I saw that. So maybe you're onto something there, Lisa.
And there was no ESPN then.
There was no ESPN. Scott Soshnick, sports business reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Bloomberg 1130 studio, talking about the business of sport. Check out the Business of Sport podcast with Eben Novy-Williams, Scott Soshnick, and Michael Barr. A new episode is available now at Bloomberg.com and at iTunes. Looking at the market right here, still holding gains. Lisa, the Dow up 320 points, 1.5%.
I will say, though, this just crossing, that gold futures are extending their losses. They're poised for the worst week since 2011. Just going back to what Vince Signorella said, wither gold, wither the stock market.
Exactly. We'll have more for you. The business, the balance of power coming up with David Weston. We'll have more on the market coming up. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. That saying, success breeds success, it's true.
Are we seeing any improvement?
Carol Masser.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Bloomberg Radio. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Good morning. I'm Greg Jarrett. Stocks are struggling to hold on to gains as investors seek more information on how governments and central banks would protect the global economy from coronavirus. David Sowerby, Ancora Advisors, tells Bloomberg equities he thinks could actually be near a bottom.
We are pretty close to pennies away from those lows we saw in late 2008, early 2009. That, to me, suggests the market is washed out. And I'll say quickly, when I look at the ratio of insider buys to insider sells, that has spiked higher.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is currently up 1.9%, up 48. The Dow is up 2%, up 426. And remember, it had been up well over 1,000 points at the open. The NASDAQ is up 1.6%, up 113. The 10-year is now down 21/30 seconds. The yield is 0.87%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is edged into the red. It's actually little change now at $31.50 a barrel. While COMEX gold is down 3.8% at $15.30 even per ounce. Gold futures have extended their losses and are poised for the worst week since 2011. The dollar yen is at 107.24. The euro is at $1.1066, and the British pound at $1.2401. We're also led to believe that the G7 leaders are now working to organize a video conference summit on the virus. It's expected to take place on Monday. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. It's time now for Balance of Power with David Weston. I'm Greg Jarrett, and this is Bloomberg. This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We need an economy that works for everybody.
I am the one who has the broadest coalition.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
These lawyers brought the case, and in my view, they should be sanctioned.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Markets staged something of a comeback after the bloodbath this week. The Fed brings out the bazooka of liquidity, and we are 3 hours away from a news conference at which President Trump is expected to declare a national emergency because of the coronavirus. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, welcome to Balance of Power. We continue to hear reports, often conflicting, about plans for the federal government to step up in a big way to deal with the coronavirus. And we will hear more from the president in about 3 hours' time at that news conference. Welcome now a man who represents over 12 million workers nationwide, many of whom have a very great deal at stake in any proposed fiscal stimulus plan. He is Richard Trumka. He's head of the AFL-CIO, a position he has held now for more than a decade. So, Richard, thank you so much for staying with us here. Give us a sense of what you would like to hear from the President of the United States in 3 hours.
Well, first of all, I'd like for him to start telling everybody the truth. Just square away with everybody and tell them. This is a president that denied testing and in order to keep the numbers hit a number of weeks ago. And as a result, people are suffering for it now. And this situation is worse than it could be. So I'd like for him to come square and tell us that. Tell us the second thing about why he decided yesterday to block a temporary standard that would have provided adequate health and safety tools for frontline workers who face the corona disease. He fought against that tooth and nail, and now workers are going to have to deal with people who have the coronavirus with inadequate safety protection. Why did you do that? Why did you put profits in front of people? Why did you put politics in front of people? It's time for him to come clean and put America first and not him or his interests first.
Well, I don't want to put you in the position of arguing his position, but why did he do that? I mean, what was it in it for him in terms of profits or politics? It seems like providing the necessary equipment for healthcare workers seems like a no-brainer, forgive the expression.
It absolutely is a no-brainer. Because all it does, it would help contain the situation. Because now you're going to have frontline workers dealing with people that have the virus. They have inadequate equipment. They are going to get it. They are going to interact with other people and spread this. He's going to make it worse. And David, I can tell you, I have no idea in the world why any administration would block health and safety standards to protect workers who are treating us against a deadly virus.
So, Richard, make this a little more broader, because one of the concerns we're seeing in the markets, and they are going to work their way into companies and their profitability, and that often means jobs as a practical matter. It affects workers sooner or later. What would you like in terms of fiscal stimulus so that some of your members don't get laid off, to put it very directly?
Well, they could do a number of things right now. Obviously, our economy is 72% driven by consumer spending. So putting money in the pockets of people so that they can spend it will keep the economy up. So a direct payment, for instance, to families like President Bush did could be a terrific stimulus. Obviously, giving sick days to people who don't have them so that if they have to be isolated, they don't have to stop spending and hurt the economy that way. But we also want to see money get in the hands of the states through Medicaid. Have Medicaid expansion and money get into their hands so that they can do things. And then normal infrastructure projects, start doing them. It's a twofer. It helps the country become more efficient, and it can help us. It can spur the economy in the process of doing this. But the best thing that we can do is contain this thing. Stop it from spreading so that all of this stuff ultimately isn't necessary. And quite frankly, we've not seen a very adequate job from this president so far on that front.
And picking up on one thing you mentioned, because I think it's related to containing, that is to make sure there's sick pay for people that can stay home if they need to stay home. They don't feel the economic pressure to have to show up even if they're not feeling well. We're told that there's a deal that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, has worked out with Stephen Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, may come forward as soon as today. The Senate is going to stay in session to pass it next week. It doesn't take care of all the issues that you talk about, but it does have free testing. It does have sick pay. It does have family leave pay. From what you know of that, is that a good bill?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you what we know it has. It has free testing, which is good, so that people who are at the bottom end of the economic spectrum and can't afford testing won't run away from it. Second of all, it has enhanced unemployment insurance. That's good, because if people are going to get laid off and they're going to get hurt by that. It also has strengthened food security initiatives, including SNAP, student meals, seniors nutrition, and food banks. That's a good thing. And then it does have the sick days in it. So those are all good things. What it doesn't have in it is a temporary emergency standard that would have protected frontline workers. And that was blocked by this administration. And workers are going to get the disease and spread the disease because we don't have adequate health and safety equipment to protect them from the disease. And that's unconscionable, David. Truly unconscionable.
One of the things I think that strikes some people, at least, is we don't seem to have a coordinated overall approach here. Going back to 2008, 2009, you can think what was done was right or wrong, but there was a big comprehensive plan to deal with it that was coordinated on both sides of the aisle and Capitol Hill and an executive branch. Is this just a different way of doing business, or why is it so different this time?
Well, let me go back and tell you two things that this administration did that made the problem worse, and it made it get us to where we are. The first thing was, right when they took over, OSHA was about to issue a standard. That's the Occupational Health and Safety Administration. They were about to issue a standard that would have required employers to have a plan, to educate their people, and to have adequate safety protection to protect those employees from contagious diseases. This administration scrapped that. The second thing they did, President Bush put together a pandemic disease coordination group and team. President Bush did that. President Obama built on that. And the first thing this group did, the administration now, they disbanded that. They did away with the pandemic disease infrastructure that they have to now rebuild. So they're scrambling to trying to rebuild it. The third thing that they did is we have the fewest number of inspectors and health specialists in OSHA that we've had in its history. So there were fewer people out there capable of protecting the workers that are out there. They got caught flat-footed, and now they're scrambling to try to catch up, and the American public and the American worker are paying the price because they were totally unprepared.
Mr. Trump, I really appreciate you spending time with us today. You've laid it out pretty comprehensively. It's very sobering what you've had to say. That is Richard Trumka. He is the president of the AFL-CIO. Coming up here, we're going to check in on the markets, which are up today, off the highs, but still up a bit. That's better than where they've been after a very, very tumultuous week. At the same time, we want to tie that in, if we can, to what is going on in Washington as we look forward to that presidential news conference that is slated for 3 o'clock this afternoon. That is when we're told President Trump will declare a national emergency. And to do all of that, we're going to have a talk with Ed Mills of Raymond James, who really knows the markets and knows public policy at the same time. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow enjoy each other's company.
Most of us don't speak Mandarin. John, do you speak Mandarin?
I did not speak Mandarin.
Delayed at the dentist and now you're late for school pickup. You need a free now. Need to take the dog to the vet before lunch. Should have gotten a free now. Trying to get 4 kids and their baggage to the airport. Free now. Sometimes you can't get from A to B fast enough. Download the Free Now app today for quick pickups and reliable drivers, no matter the situation. Less hassle, more hustle with Free Now.
This ad is made from 100% recycled commercials. Just like Smart Water's
all new
bottles are made from
100% recycled
plastic.
What's that number again?
100%. Every Smart Water bottle is made using recycled plastic, and because it's still
100%
recyclable, the plastic will be used again
and again.
Smart Water, now in a 100% recycled plastic bottle. Label and cap 100% recyclable, but not made from recycled plastic. Yet. We're working on it.
This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
A rally that lasted most of the first part of the session is fading, continuing a crazy period on Wall Street that dragged major indices toward one of the worst weeks in stock market history. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is now up 1.8%, up 44. The Dow is also up 1.8%, up 388. And the NASDAQ is up 1.4%, up 99. The 10-year right now is down 15.30 seconds. The yield is 0.85%. West Texas Intermediate crude had been surging most of the early part of the session as well. It's now down 0.7% at 31.26 per barrel. COMEX gold right now is down 3.3% at 15.3760 an ounce. The dollar yen, 107.16. The euro, $1.10.87. The British pound, $1.2402. As you might imagine, one of the hardest hit sectors is travel, and airlines are part of that. Deutsche Lufthansa is expected to seek a loan from Germany's state-run bank to weather the fallout from the coronavirus. This, according to a source, says as a last resort, the government could also purchase a stake in the airline as part of a rescue plan. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. We continue now with Balance of Power and David Weston.
Thanks so much, Greg Jarrett. From the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. There are two big stories dominating the news these days, the coronavirus and the markets, and they are inextricably interlinked. Although Secretary of Mnuchin says the best thing that we can do is just stop watching how our investments are doing.
Don't stare at the screen, okay? It'll be higher a year from now, as I said. People who weathered the crash in 1987, people who weathered the financial crisis, for long-term investors, the U.S. is the best place to invest in the world.
To help us sort out where we are today, we welcome back now Ed Mills, Managing Director and Washington Policy Analyst at Raymond James. So, Ed, thanks so much for being back with us. Let's start with what the Secretary said. Is he right? Is the U.S. the best place to invest in the world, and should we all just relax?
Well, when I speak with institutional investors here in the United States and around the world, that's been the trade, especially of years, that certainly there's political risk, there is kind of volatility around the world, but the United States does have the deepest, most liquid markets. As it relates to the Treasury Secretary, kind of not unreasonable long-term advice, but what does stick out there is, generally speaking, this administration has been very different than previous administrations being willing to provide investment advice. In my opinion, what the Treasury Secretary, what the Fed, what Congress needs to do is maintain as much confidence and as much liquidity as possible and let the markets work themselves out.
Well, we certainly saw the Fed step up yesterday on the liquidity, and again today, for that matter, in the repo facility. So, I mean, they've really injected a lot of liquidity. So maybe, is that part taken care of, do you think, for the time being?
As I speak with investors, and it relates to the Fed, I think for the most part, they have been okay to kind of, complementary to the actions that the Fed has taken so far and over the term of Powell's chairmanship. But where I do hear some concerns is that the Fed has not done what they need to do regarding communication. The 50 basis point cut that came on an emergency basis, a lot of folks felt as if that might have been the right action, but the Fed really needed to explain exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it. I know we're in a blackout period, but communication is arguably more important at this point, and that's really part of that kind of confidence side of adding confidence in liquidity. We're good on liquidity. We need more confidence.
And certainly the markets didn't react particularly well to that 50 basis point cut last week. Let's turn over to the other side. We're now going to hear from the president in 2 hours and 45 minutes, I think, at 3 o'clock this afternoon Eastern time. And the reports are he's going to declare a national emergency. What do we need to hear from the political side, from the White House, from the Congress, from fiscal?
Yeah, so when I worked up in Capitol Hill, I worked on the House of Representatives and Senate. I worked a lot on emergency declaration legislation, the Stafford Act. Right. For this declaration today, it's about time. Really, all it does is open up the toolkit from the federal government. You have a lot of state and local governments who've already done this. One thing to note that this is an emergency declaration. It is not a major disaster declaration, which you generally can't do for these type of emergencies. So that does limit a little bit of the toolkit, which really puts a lot of pressure on Congress to act.
Sorry, Ed, just to stick with it, because you understand this so much better than I do. So what does it allow the president to do without going to Congress?
So an emergency declaration versus a major disaster declaration allows the federal government to do debris removal in emergency protective measures. On emergency protective measures, that's going to be all of the healthcare response here. A major disaster declaration is usually what you get after a flood, a hurricane, and that's the full toolkit of the federal government. I would not be surprised if we see a legislative change to kind of include things like pandemics into what is a major disaster declaration. But that's probably a little bit of a nuance that the market is going to have to understand here near term, that this is a positive step forward, but it's still not the full cavalry or toolkit that gets opened up once this gets signed. It's really just supporting what state and local governments have already done over the last week.
Does it free up FEMA funds to go into particular hotspots where there's a lot of instances of coronavirus, or for that matter, even to give some particular funds to get some of the testing going that seems to be a little slow out of the blocks here?
Yeah, so if it falls into the definition of emergency protective measures, it is going to allow for that. But some of the other kind of economic assistance that usually follows with FEMA in the full FEMA toolkit, it is something short of that. We debated this a lot on Capitol Hill post 9/11. I worked in the New York congressional delegation post 9/11, and I spent years trying to figure out what changes need to occur to the Stafford Act, because we need to think beyond just traditional natural disasters to kind of do this. We didn't ultimately succeed in a lot of those things. I think it's going to be time to revisit this, because the disasters that we deal with are not necessarily things that are cookie cutter things from the past.
So Ed, you are a real aficionado, a real expert in Washington policy. For those of us who remember 2008, 2009, it felt like, I mean, it was a mess at the time, but it felt like we had, the Fed working together with the Treasury, working together the Hill, Republicans and Democrats, and there was a coordinated response. You can go back and say it was the right one or the wrong one, it was too much, it was too little, but it was coordinated and it was comprehensive. We don't feel like we have that right now. What's changed?
Yeah, and so at that point, I was working on the House Financial Services Committee and kind of working on some of that response. And, I saw firsthand the Treasury Secretary coming up to the Hill, having the Fed have real leadership with the Hill. There was a coordinated response. It took a little bit time. What we always see with fiscal response is that the politics has to work itself out, especially in election years. So we had the first failure of TARP before we were able to come together. What I hear from my contacts on the Hill right now is that we have to relive some of that TARP analogy, that it's going to have to be a multi-step process. What we're going to get from the House today is that immediate health care, paid sick leave, nutritional support, and we're probably going to have to wait for the economic stimulus, just like we had to wait between getting TARP in the Obama-era stimulus before. We're probably still weeks, maybe months out before a final kind of economic package passes the House and the Senate. And part of that's because these members are not quite sure they want to do it, how big the scope is going to be, and how to target it.
And for once, it doesn't feel entirely partisan, because it doesn't sound like some of the Republicans up on the Hill are on the same page with the president.
And that's been a fascinating component of this. And I think one of the things that we felt was important about the president's speech earlier this week is that him making this serious and finally calling for this full government response does give political cover to Republicans on the Hill to start responding. They were in an odd spot, especially for their constituents, where they were being told not to overreact, that this was not a big deal, but then for Congress to kind of massively pass a fiscal stimulus package. So as this has developed, that gives them that political cover to act, but it's still going to take several weeks at a minimum.
Really interesting, really helpful. That's Ed Mills of Raymond James. Coming up, the Fed made a massive liquidity injection into financial markets yesterday. Bloomberg's Matt Boesler is here to tell us why it did it. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However,
this ad is made from 100% recycled commercials. Just like Smart Water's bottles are made from
100% recycled
plastic.
What's that number again?
100%. Every Smart Water bottle is made using recycled plastic, and because it's still
100%
recyclable, the plastic will be used again
and again.
Smart Water, now in a 100% recycled plastic bottle. Label and cap 100% recyclable, but not made from recycled plastic. Yet. We're working on it.
From home offices to shared workspaces, however you work, at Starling Bank, we'll help you to keep your business flying. With easy integrations that connect your banking with your accounting software, your business is ready for takeoff.
Starling Bank. Helping business fly.
Yeah, so I want to upgrade to like the latest phone you got. Okay. All right. But like for an unbelievably good price. Yeah. And I want it where I could choose the length for my own contract. Yeah.
On O2, you're our headline act, which is why you can get the phone you want for less per month with a custom plan on O2.
Minimum upfront cost, direct only, device plan of 3 to 36 months, refresh credit by Telefonica UK Limited, terms apply.
Today is your day. Visualize your goals. Grab the bull of opportunity by the horns of ambition, because there's two yous in future. Which do you want to be?
Or leave the motivation to Vitality. You could get the Apple Watch Series 5 with our health insurance. Set goals, track your activity, and keep that New Year fitness routine on track. Now that's real motivation. Search Vitality Apple Watch. Life's better with Vitality. Available on certain Vitality plans. Minimum premiums, terms, and exclusions apply.
It's a crazy week in the markets. The Fed yesterday felt the need to inject a very great deal of liquidity into the markets. And on Wall Street Week, we talked with BlackRock's Rick Reeder about why that was so important.
When you put liquidity in the system, it takes pressure off the dollar. We operate in a global financial system. When you take pressure off the dollar, it makes it easier for emerging markets. So lets emerging markets go and enact policy on their own. That is a really big deal. Liquidity gets in the system, and it's got a real velocity to it. And they addressed it, and they had to do it.
Here to take us through just how big a move this was is our Bloomberg Fed reporter, Matt Bosler. So, Matt, thanks so much for being with us. I mean, the headline across the Bloomberg and the story is it's more than $5 trillion potentially liquidity. This is huge, isn't it?
Well, it is. That headline certainly sounds huge, but I think what we're learning today is that it's maybe not as big as first meets the eye, because really what the Fed did was they rolled out a number of repo operations or short-term cash lending programs to the banks. And what they said was, we're going to offer $500 billion yesterday. We're going to offer $500 billion more today, and we're going to continue doing this over the coming weeks. But the actual amount of money that's being drawn down by the banks is still, in the sub-$100 billion range. And so the take-up on those operations so far, we haven't really seen kicking into high gear. And I think it remains to be seen the extent to which these loans are actually going to be tapped. But certainly the announcement is, kind of an open-ended nature and meant to signal that the Fed is there if needed with these loans.
Exactly. And sometimes if you know it's there, you don't need to use it, because my understanding is part of what they were responding to is people who needed cash so badly that they were doing things like selling 10 years, where normally you'd be going to that for security. And it was really a fluke in the marketplace. So maybe just knowing it's there so I don't need to worry about it does the trick.
That's exactly right. And so I think you kind of nailed it, what's been going on this week. So, we don't see these extended periods of market stress like we're seeing right now very often. And to your point, things can get a little topsy-turvy. And sometimes the easiest thing to sell if you need to raise cash quickly is Treasury bonds. And so that's why we've seen that market really starting to gum up over the last week or so. And that's exactly why the Fed came in, because that's obviously one of the largest and most liquid and most important markets in the world. And they're very interested in making sure that market is functioning smoothly. Even if the stock market is and there's a lot of volatility, this move wasn't necessarily aimed at addressing and trying to stem market volatility in general, but just to make sure that, things are working the way they're supposed to be and transactions can still take place.
It's fascinating. Thank you so much, Matt. That's Bloomberg's Matt Bosler. He reports on the Fed for us, and there's no one better. Coming up, she ran a large public company, and then she also ran for president of the United States. We're going to be joined by Carly Fiorina to talk to her about what she would like to hear from President Trump at his press conference just about 2.5 hours from right now. That all is coming up, and we are on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are up 1% as investors seek more information on how governments and the central banks plan to protect the global economy from the coronavirus fallout. The Dow is up 242 points, S&P up 25, NASDAQ climbing 50. The FDA is giving its emergency approval to the Swiss drug maker Roche for a new highly automated coronavirus test that's 10 times faster than what's being used right now. U.S. economic growth is expected to slow nearly to a halt this quarter. Forecasters are changing their outlook almost daily as the pandemic unfolds. Analysts surveyed by Bloomberg now see a growth rate of just 0.1%. And as mostly all U.S. sports have grounded to a halt for the next few weeks, there is one form of competition that's still going pretty strong despite the pandemic. It's esports. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Leaders are born.
What does it take to get the markets back on the rails?
Born leaders are here.
The timeline for that can be slow.
Karen Moscow.
Several nations are negotiating to evacuate diplomats.
And Nathan Hager.
How are you advising clients to navigate the shifting headlines?
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Are we heading into correction territory, do you think?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, the coronavirus poses great challenges for leaders of our companies and of our nation. Carly Fiorina is here to explain what it looks like from both perspectives. But first, let's get a market check with Greg Jarrett.
Well, thank you. Yep, we're looking at U.S. stocks continuing to struggle to hold on to gains as investors seek more information on how governments and central banks would protect the global economy from coronavirus fallout. The S&P rose less than 1% in midday trading after climbing as much as 6% at the open. We look at those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. Right now, the S&P is up 1.5%, up 38. Dow's also up 1.5%, up 325. And the NASDAQ is up 1.4%, up 103. The 10-year is down 21/30 seconds. The yield is 0.87%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is currently down 0.3% at $31.42 a barrel. COMEX gold is now down 3.8% at $15.29 even per ounce. The dollar yen is at 107.41. The euro $1.10.81, and the British pound is right now at $1.23.95. Canada has passed a new NAFTA trade deal in a rush. They voted unanimously to pass an overhaul of its free trade deal with the U.S. and Mexico today at the same time that they suspended their session for 5 weeks due to, you guessed it, coronavirus. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett. Now more Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks so much, Greg Jarrett. Equities have been hit hard this week by the coronavirus, but it's largely because of the concern for the effects on the companies behind those equities. Welcome now someone who ran a large and complex publicly traded company, Carly Fiorina. She was CEO of HP. She was the first woman to lead a Fortune top 20 company, and then she went on to run for the presidency in 2016. Ms. Fiorina is now the founder and chairman of Carly Fiorina Enterprises and Unlocking Potential. We welcome her now back to Bloomberg. So, Ms. Fiorina, thank you so much for joining us. I want to talk about the president's news conference coming up, but first, give us a perspective from the C-suite, from a CEO, because we have virtually a generation of top corporate leadership who has never had to really manage a significant downturn.
It's so true. And, you know, decisions that are made in the tough times are ones that really define a leader. A leader needs to remember, whether it's a CEO or a president, frankly, a leader needs to remember that it is the purpose of a leader to serve others, to serve an institution, to serve employees and customers and shareholders, to serve citizens if you are the president. And I think in good times, it's easy for lots of people to get confused about what leadership is and think, well, you know, leadership is about getting good press or concentrating power or having fame and a lot of accolades. And leadership isn't about any of those things. It's about serving others and solving problems and changing the order of things for the better. And it's important to remember that, because in tough times like this, the decisions you make have consequences, obviously, and they're usually not obvious decisions. They're difficult decisions. And some people are going to disagree with those decisions. And so at that point, remembering that you are a servant and remembering that courage and character count are enormously important.
And sometimes serving, and that includes the shareholders as well as the employees and as well as the underlying franchise, requires, as you suggest, some tough decisions, even some decisions that hurt some people. We're going to see some layoffs, I fear, in this country as these companies confront these things. How do you go about making those really tough decisions? Because you need to do it for the good of the overall organization.
Yes, it's such a good question, David, and unfortunately I had to make many of those tough decisions because I led HP during a very turbulent 6-year period. We went through SARS as well, but 9/11, the worst technology recession in 25 years, and unfortunately people did have to lose their jobs. And so what I would say is, first, transparency, candor, empathy is critical. Tell people why you are making the decision you are making. Level with them about the impact of that decision on them and on everyone else. I can remember going onto a factory floor and announcing a layoff face to face and explaining why it was necessary, because we were trying to save the company, we were trying to save other jobs. So leveling with people is so key, and I think it's one of the reasons why the market is so in such turmoil right now, because they don't see leadership that levels with any of us about where we really are, what are the consequences to the extent that we know them, and what's the plan to deal with them.
Which really does bring us, at least for me, up to that news conference for the president in just under 2.5 hours from right now. What would you advise the president? If you were the president, what would you do in that news conference? Because